clarify a few things. Earlier, Representative Babin said that the Biden administration did away with MPP as well as Title 42 restrictions. However, Title 42 remains in effect until April 21st. The other thing was Representative Gomer said Border Patrol was not allowed to stop people coming into the United States. They're not allowed to apprehend them. So what would he have them do to turn them back in the middle of the river? Could you please clarify?
Your question about what I said about the Biden administration reversing MPP, that pertains to UACs. That pertains to UACs. And we've got Title 42, Title 42, public health restrictions. They have done away with that for unaccompanied children. For other people, it has not been done away with. So thank you for the question.
And Representative Gomer talking about Border Patrol not allowed to stop people, what would he want them to do?
Well, I don't know where our friend Lou Gomer went, but we just want the law to be enforced. And the law says you must be detained, you must have your day in court, and then if you don't have a meritorious asylum claim or a lawful reason for being here, you got to go back to your own country, your country of origin. And we'll be compassionate about it, we'll be humane about it, but we must stand firm in that regard, or we have no borders in this country. It's really that simple. And I think when you juxtapose the last administration reducing illegal border crossings by 70+% with this uncontrollable surge, it's real simple. Secure the border, enforce the laws. I'd say turn the magnets off that pull people here and close the loopholes that people are exploiting. But if you just, at a minimum, because Congress has a lot of work to do, we can't put it all on any one administration. But you got to start with securing the border and enforcing the laws. And these poor folks out here, local, state, and federal law enforcement officers, have had their legs completely cut out from under them on account of catching and releasing, on account of no notice to appear, and quite frankly, the Title 42, which we say is still in place, not really. It's partially in place. You got Democrats like Henry Cuellar joining us, telling the truth. He says, I'm getting more information from Mexico and the government officials in Mexico than I am this administration. That's not from a Republican. That's from our friend Henry Cuellar, who we will see later on this evening and have breakfast with him tomorrow. So some of these may be half-heartedly, maybe on paper, still in place, but we can tell you down the line, declaration of emergency, having support and backup from the military, holding accountable sanctuary cities. The list is long, and I'm sure you have access to it. But it's a half-ass deal. Okay, that's what my dad was called, a half-ass a way to secure the border and enforce the laws. At best, most of it is just completely abdicating the laws on the books and the responsibility. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did you go to the holding pen at Council Lewis Bridge? And if you did, can you detail what you saw?
We did. We did go, we went a lot of places, so it's hard for me to keep track of exactly where, but we went to a bridge. I think it's the bridge you're referring to. There were droves of people late at night coming across and turning themselves in, essentially. I don't think I saw one of them that didn't have a child in their arms. And we already talked about the treacherous journey and the risk that they take, but it is very clear that they've received the message. And these children are really being used as a passport because they know that's their best chance of being released and held unaccountable to stay in this country permanently. And that's clear.
Look, what they're not telling you is that my administration has given a green light to child traffickers and human traffickers. know damn well that some of these children over here are being trafficked by criminal organizations. The reason I say that, when I was an ICE director, we had criminal investigations where children are being rented by cartels to pull aside the family unit. Once they get released, they get back to Mexico and re-rented again. It happens. No one's celebrating more of this presidency than the criminal cartels in Mexico. They're back in business. That's why I said they're facilitating crime on the border because cartels are making millions of dollars a day. And I'm sick of them saying they're being humane. When you send enticements out that puts the most vulnerable people in the arms of criminal cartels, it's dangerous. To say the Trump administration, shame on them for separating 2,500 families because the parents being prosecuted. U.S. citizen families get separated every day by sheriffs who arrest a U.S. citizen parent who commits a crime with his child. They get separated. This administration has already caused 17,000 family separations by parents putting their children in the hands of criminal cartels. That's what's happening. And the reason I get so emotional about this, whether I'm testifying in front of Congress or on TV, is because I've seen the results. I've talked to women who were raped over 20 times making that journey. I've held dead children in my arms. This administration, I said it when they announced it, that death's going to come. You're going to see more rapes, you're going to see more deaths. Because you entice the vulnerable population, they're going to come. That's why this administration needs to go back to at least turn on the Remain in Mexico program. They'll still get their hearings. But they're not going to put themselves in the hands of criminal cartels. There's nothing humane about that. I've seen what these cartels can do. If they can't pay their smuggling fee, they will be tortured. Ice Storm, Phoenix, Arizona, can't pay a smuggling fee. They say, we get to Chicago 10,000. Once they get to the stash house, they call the family, 20,000. We can't afford it. They will call the family and torture that family and let the family listen to them because they couldn't pay their smuggling fees. If they couldn't pay, they kill them. And they did. Criminal cartels have been empowered by this administration. People are going to die. That's the problem, and I've seen it. I've seen it, I've investigated it, it's a fact. That's what the danger is here. It's not only on a lawless border, people will die. And only the bad guys are going to win.
Pete Sessions.
I want to offer a speaker here real quickly who spoke to us at breakfast this morning. And he has a very clear message that we need to hear because I think it's important. Mr. Ramirez, you mind coming up and taking a minute with us? And I hope you'll, I've asked him to do something that I feel very strongly about, sir.
Gracias, congresista. Le quiero dar el agradecimiento a todos los de la prensa de estar aquí en este momento. Y darle muchas gracias a todos los congresistas, a los oficiales, a los sheriffes, a los rancheros por estar con nosotros ahora. Esto es una causa muy importante. No se puede negar de lo que está pasando. Necesitamos ponerle atención a toda la gente que está aquí, la que está en las líneas de enfrente, peleando y soportar toda esa gente. Y la gente que puede hacer esto son estos señores y señoras que nos pueden ayudar en Congreso. Otra vez, muchas gracias por acompañarnos aquí y a la prensa, a la rueda de prensa también, que estén aquí ahora apoyando a esta causa. Muchas gracias.
Very much. This is important because the people who live in this area who have come legally to our country and who call America home care very much about what is happening to our country and what our country would become also, and that is where rule of law would not be important. And this is what is causing so many people to flee, is from drug cartels and governments that are corrupt, that will not protect its own people. And yet when you come here and you're legal and you have a business and you expect people to have a system that works, and that system that needs to work is what this gentleman just spoke about. He spoke about a system that needs to work properly and how people who are back here stand for rule of law, the big dream in America, but doing that where we have control of our border through legal processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And ma'am, just to put a fine point there on your question, it was an example of how border patrol agents were taken off task of their security mission to process and to care for these folks, and the gaping hole it leaves. We talked to the drug enforcement agents, but just down the line, you leave a gaping hole for criminal activity. So we expect to see more acceleration and exacerbation of the gangs, the crime, the drugs, on account of these folks being taken off task. Yes, sir.
Two more questions.
Yes, Commissioner Volker, how are you? Good to see you back in the area. I wonder if you can give us your thoughts. You were just there at CBP not too long ago, and you see what just happened in the last 2 months. It's up 180 more or less. What are your thoughts on what happened? Let me get this mic moving.
So, like I said, you're exactly right. This is a 180. But the stroke, what we've been saying is the stroke of the pen. This president, through executive orders, has dismantled every single effective tool, authority, and policy that we had to effectively mitigate the crisis that we saw in 2019. Look, you don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to take their word. Look at the stats. The numbers don't lie. March of last year, the numbers had plummeted to 33,000. This March, 150,000. Like I said, a 350% increase. You can't deny those numbers. And let's go across the board. Again, UAC, the highest unaccompanied per month that we have seen in history. It's going to be the highest level of the numbers we've seen in over 20 years. And talk about the gaping holes. Let's talk about facts. Again, we saw this in 2019. We're seeing it right now. 50% of border resources being pulled off the line. We have that stopped. I'll give another quick stat. Last year, we had less than 800 individuals in our custody, CBP. Less than 800, which is exactly the point behind the CDC's order to further reduce the introduction of COVID-19 into our country from outside our borders. And one of the biggest things is we wanted to eliminate the number of people that we had in our open-air congregate settings because they're COVID petri dishes. 800, that was a pretty good number, and we were trying to get it lower. Guess how many they have in custody now? Over 10,000. How is that right? How is that humane? You've heard that from everybody. So when people ask what has changed, everything imaginable that gave us the ability to handle and mitigate the crisis has gone away in a matter of a few weeks. And we said, look, I don't want to, I'm going to say it. I told you so, right? Is that before the election, we were saying out there, and I too, I was called a fear monger like Tom was, and I was called a Trump sycophant because I said, if any administration did what the Biden administration said they were going to do, that you would create a crisis, an unmitigated crisis that would make 2019 pale in comparison. And here's where I got it wrong. I thought maybe by May we'd be about 100,000. We hit that last month. So everything that was in place, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg, talking about MPP is gone. And so to answer your question, MPP has been removed for everybody. They ceased that on day one. It went further than that, though, right? So they didn't just stop our ability, like, to enroll new people in MPP, which ended catch and release, which was the most significant incentive for people. They knew if they came to the border in 2019 with a family, they were going to be released into the interior United States, and as Tom Holmes, the Patriots said, never to be heard from again. MPP ended that. You saw the numbers plummet by February of 2020 by 75%. So not only did they end MPP, but they went a step further. And now they said everybody that was previously enrolled in MPP, we're actually going to bring you back, and they've already done it, and release them into the interior United States. ACAs, I've got to mention this because this is a good question. The ACAs, the silent cooperative agreements, these were unprecedented agreements with the Northern Triangle countries, along with MPP. By the way, so what did this administration do? Immediately rip up all the agreements we have with all these countries to address it as the regional crisis that it was. Unprecedented agreements that were working. We were working this crisis together as countries across the board. And they dismantled that agreement. They dismantled that cooperation. The ACAs, look, we got to where the international standard is. And the international standard should be, if you have a valid asylum claim, isn't the most humane thing is to encourage people with a valid asylum claim to seek relief and assistance in the first country they come to? Isn't that the most humane thing? This administration ripped up that policy. So now they're back in the hands of the cartel, forum shopping and coming all the way, and they're abused. And we could go on and on and on. So I know that's a long answer because I get fired up, but everything you can imagine has been changed.
Well, you have lawmakers back here who will also remember this. To add insult to injury, at the height of this new surge of illegal immigrants and the overwhelming situation that we've described, Democrats in the House passed a bill, a partisan bill, to grant amnesty, mass amnesty, and a path to citizenship for people who cut the line and are here in this country illegally. So on top of that, you've got insult to injury for the American people and the pain and suffering that you've heard and we've seen on the faces of our fellow Americans. You also had another law that was a bill that passed the House on a pure partisan basis. It said DHS, the Homeland Security Department, could not share information with local law enforcement. It also said we're going to not use the word illegal anymore. We're just going to say non-citizen. It also gave folks who come across our border and violate our laws and sovereignty the ability for taxpayer funding to have legal counsel. The list of horrible ideas that only add, if not gasoline to the fire of chaos that burns on the border, certainly insults the intelligence of the American people. And then this president makes an announcement that Kamala Harris, as vice president, is going to be the border czar. You remember the last surge, the 19th? She said that's a distraction from real issues. She called what the agents who worked for these gentlemen, she called what they did to simply enforce the immigration laws a reign of terror, compared them to the KKK. She wants to decriminalize border crossings, and she wants to give Medicare, even though in less than 10 years, Medicare is bankrupt. Guys, you can't make this stuff up. And the list is too long, as we said. I'm going to take one more question, maybe two more questions from One American News. Jen, fire away. By the way, Brian Babin mentioned that we did invite, as soon as we understood that Kamala Harris, our vice president, was in charge. In fact, I think the president's words were, she doesn't have to consult with me. She's going to go down there and fix it. And then that was right before she said she wasn't going to come to the border. She's the border czar. She's not coming to the border. But we invited her to join us on this trip because we wanted her to see what we've seen and hear what we've heard. Jen.
Thank you, Congressman. Jen Pellegrino with One American News. My question for you is at McAllen International Airport, not far from here, we witnessed this week dozens of migrants. This was in one day, with boarding passes, with paperwork that indicates they don't speak English. Please let us know what plane to get on. And they're headed for other cities within the United States. Can anybody tell us how many of these migrants are being flown not only here, but perhaps in other border cities to elsewhere within the U.S., and who is funding that? What's the situation going on here?
Will somebody answer her question? I've seen pictures of it, and I can't explain that, but I know it exists, and so...
That's a good point. This isn't a border issue. This is a United States issue. These families run all the place. They're being bused to certain bus stations being released. They're releasing some to NGOs. They're flying out of airports. And as I think Mark mentioned, we're simply completing the criminal conspiracy of alien smuggling. And I'm sure some of these families that are hiring cartels to bring their kids up here, they just got into the border. And the Biden administration is getting busted. So they're going all the country. I mean, there's Chicago, New York, Maryland, Washington State. Most of our heads are sanctuary cities. Why? Because law enforcement won't work with ICE. Which, the Biden administration said, well, murders and aggravated felons are still important, but then they dropped the law to be in sanctuary cities. So even though murderers and rapists could still be a priority through ICE, they're going to be released from sanctuary jails every day, despite what the president says, because he purposely ignored the sanctuary citizen issue. They are going to all 50 states. This issue we're dealing with in Texas is a national issue. Sanctuary cities is now a sanctuary country because this administration meant it.
Tom, if I can jump in there real quick. So this is a very important question because it's important what's happening. So when the Biden administration says they're going to start managing the crisis, we need to pay attention because the managing the crisis is 180 degrees from what we were managing the crisis under the Trump administration. Under the Trump administration, managing the crisis meant we did everything we could to prevent, apprehend, detain, and lawfully remove. What you're seeing now, what you just described, these are my words. Don't trip to these guys. These are my words. I believe this is a systematic cover-up of this administration to cover up the catastrophic crisis that it created by not simply releasing people on the border. They're pushing them out into the further interior of the United States. So it doesn't appear like the crisis that it is. And when they say they're going to get a handle on this, this is what they need. They're going to create and get really good at creating reception centers on our borders. And they're going to start releasing people as fast as humanly possible. So Tom and I, what we've been saying, on the front end, they're going to create reception centers, release them as fast as possible to cover up the catastrophic crisis, and on the back end, we have a sanctuary country. That's what this administration means by managing the crisis.
Sounds like this border crisis is coming to a town near you. National crisis, great concern. We are grateful. I'm going to say it again on behalf of my colleagues in Congress and those who are standing behind us and beside us in this endeavor. We are so appreciative that you guys would take the time to cover this. I know you have more questions, and some of these guys will stick around and answer them. We'll just do some one-on-one interviews if that's okay, because I think we're running out of time. Hey, God bless all of you here in McAllen, your local media, the national media that traveled to be here with us. And especially God bless the men and women in uniform, the Border Patrol folks, the ICE folks, our local and state lawmen and women. God bless them and God bless America. Thank you all.